She only had one Christmas left to live. A billionaire spent every moment proving the doctors wrong. Charlotte Sebastian was memorizing the warmth of her coffee cup because she knew a day would come when she'd be too weak to hold it. Stage 4 cancer does that. Makes you notice things. Makes you count moments like currency. She was 34 with 6 months to live, sitting in a Charleston hospital cafe in July 2024, planning a life that would end before Christmas. Then a billionaire in an expensive suit sat down across from her and asked the strangest question: what if time didn't matter? Harrison Wells was about to learn that loving someone with an expiration date changes you in ways that last forever. Charlotte was about to discover that some men don't run from hard things, they run toward them. Together, they had 5 months to prove that the depth of love matters more than the length of it. This is their impossible, beautiful, heartbreaking story. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think about the last time a story made you feel something real. Made your heart race. Made tears fall without permission. Made you remember why being human is so beautifully complicated. That's what we do here at CJ Stories. Whether you're returning or just discovering us, welcome home. This is your safe space for tears, laughter, hope, and everything in between. Today's story will take you somewhere unexpected. It'll make you think. It'll make you feel. And I promise you, you won't see the ending coming. But here's the thing, the magic only works if you stay till the very end. No skipping. No rushing. Just you, me, and a story that might just change how you see the world. If it moves you, let me know you're here. Subscribe, like, and share this with someone whose heart needs touching today. Ready? Let's step into today's story. Harrison Wells stood in the oncology wing of Charleston Medical Center on a Thursday morning in July 2024, wondering how 37 years of carefully constructed control had led him to this hallway that smelled like antiseptic and crushed hopes. The hospital administrator walked beside him, tablet in hand, rattling off numbers. $5 million for the new research wing. $8 million for equipment. Harrison had written bigger checks for less important things. He'd funded a museum wing once because someone served good champagne at a fundraiser. This was different. Mr. Wells, the board is incredibly grateful for your generosity. This facility will change lives. Harrison nodded, barely listening. Through the window of a patient room, he saw a little girl laughing while a nurse made funny faces. The girl wore a pink headscarf. She couldn't have been more than 7. Something shifted in his chest. A reminder that all his money, all his success, all the billion-dollar deals, meant nothing against the things that really mattered. I'd like to tour the facility, Harrison said. The whole thing. Not the sanitized version you show donors. The administrator blinked. Of course. Right this way. They walked through corridors where hope and heartbreak lived side by side. Harrison had built an empire on reading people, on seeing what others missed. Here, he saw exhaustion in the eyes of families camped in waiting rooms. Saw determination in patients shuffling down hallways attached to 4 poles. Saw doctors and nurses performing small miracles with inadequate resources. He'd write another check before he left. A bigger one. They turned a corner near the hospital cafe, and that's when Harrison saw her. She sat alone at a small table by the window, afternoon sunlight turning her rich brown skin luminous. Her hair fell in natural curls past her shoulders, and she wore a simple yellow sundress that somehow made the dreary hospital cafe look like a garden party. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped him cold. It was the way she held her coffee cup. Like she was memorizing the warmth of it. Like she was cataloging the sensation for some future moment when she might need to remember what warmth felt like. She stared out the window at the historic Charleston streets beyond, and Harrison recognized that expression. He'd seen it in his own mirror after his father died. The look of someone doing complicated math, trying to figure out how to fit everything they needed to say, needed to do, needed to be, into whatever time remained. Mr. Wells? The administrator had stopped, waiting. Give me a minute. Harrison walked toward her table before his brain could supply all the logical reasons this was a terrible idea. He didn't approach strange women in hospital cafes. He didn't deviate from schedules. He certainly didn't interrupt someone's private moment because something in their expression reached inside his chest and squeezed. But his feet kept moving. She looked up as his shadow fell across her table. Her eyes were remarkable. Deep brown, intelligent, and carrying a weight that had nothing to do with sadness and everything to do with fierce, deliberate presence. I'm sorry to interrupt, Harrison said, and meant it. This is going to sound strange, but you look like you could use better coffee than whatever they're serving here. She glanced at her cup, then back at him. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. You're critiquing hospital coffee? That's brave. It's terrible, but it's predictable. There's comfort in that. Her voice had a warm, measured quality. The voice of someone who chose words carefully because they mattered. Harrison Wells. He extended his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. Her handshake was firm, genuine. Charlotte Sebastian. May I sit, Charlotte? That depends. Are you about to try to sell me something? Because I've had a long day, and I'm not in the market for timeshares or new religions. Harrison laughed. Actually laughed. When was the last time someone had made him do that within 30 seconds of meeting them? No sales pitch. Just honest conversation with someone who looks like she understands that sometimes terrible coffee is better than no coffee at all. Charlotte studied him for a long moment. Really looked at him. Harrison had been looked at plenty in his life. Assessed by investors, evaluated by competitors, appraised by women interested in his bank account. This was different. She was seeing something beyond the expensive suit and the carefully maintained appearance. Okay, Harrison Wells. You can sit. But I'm keeping my terrible coffee. He sat across from her, and the noise of the café seemed to fade into background static. So what brings a man in a suit that costs more than most people's monthly rent to the Charleston Medical Center café? Charlotte asked. She sipped her coffee, eyes never leaving his. Philanthropy tour? Or are you one of those billionaires who shows up at hospitals for photo opportunities? Harrison blinked. How did you know you're a billionaire? Please. That suit, that watch, that haircut, and the way you carry yourself like the world generally rearranges itself to suit your preferences? Not hard to figure out. She set down her cup. Also, the hospital administrator over there keeps glancing this way like you're made of solid gold. Harrison glanced over his shoulder. Sure enough, the administrator was hovering near the entrance, pretending to check his phone. You're observant. I notice things. It's kind of my job. What do you do? I own a bookstore cafe. The Lighthouse on East Bay Street. You probably haven't heard of it. The one with the blue door and the garden out back. Charlotte's eyebrows rose. You know it? I walk past it sometimes. Early mornings when I can't sleep. You have a sign in the window that says, "Come in, we're open to possibilities." I always liked that. Something shifted in Charlotte's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition of something unexpected. Most people don't notice the sign, she said quietly. They're too busy looking at their phones. I notice things too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Outside the window, Charleston carried on its beautiful, historic existence. Horse-drawn carriages clicked past. Tourists photographed rainbow-colored houses. The city moved at its own graceful pace, indifferent to the dramas unfolding in hospital rooms above them. So you really are here for philanthropy, Charlotte said. The research wing. I saw the announcement in the paper. Guilty. That's good. What you're doing. This place needs it. She turned her cup in slow circles on the table. They do important work here. The way she said it, Harrison knew. She wasn't here visiting someone. She was here for herself. Every instinct told him not to ask. It was too personal, too invasive. They'd known each other for 5 minutes. But something about Charlotte Sebastian made him want to know everything. Want to understand the weight he'd seen in her eyes, want to trace the source of her careful presence. Charlotte. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, she said, matter of fact. Clinical. Found out last month. 6 months, maybe less. They told me today that the treatment options are limited. Basically, I can buy a little time, or I can actually live the time I have left. She met his eyes. I'm choosing to live it. The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. This vibrant, sharp, beautiful woman who made terrible coffee sound like poetry and who noticed signs in windows. 6 months. I'm so sorry. Everyone is. That's sweet, but it doesn't change anything. Charlotte's voice was gentle, not bitter. I'm 34 years old, Harrison. I had plans. Big ones. I was going to expand my bookstore, maybe open a second location. I was going to finally visit Paris. I was going to fall in love properly, not the messy practice runs I've done before. She said it all so calmly. Like she was discussing a change in weather patterns. And now? Harrison asked, his voice rougher than intended. Now I'm revising. Making new plans that fit a different timeline. Charlotte smiled, and it was genuine. I'm not giving up. I'm just being realistic about what's possible. Harrison leaned forward. What if you could do all of it? What if the timeline didn't matter? That's a nice thought. But timelines always matter. That's how time works. Not always. Charlotte tilted her head, studying him again. You have that look rich people get when they think money can fix things. I appreciate it, but cancer doesn't care about your bank account. I'm not talking about fixing anything. I'm talking about living. Really living. You said you were choosing to live your time. What does that look like? I don't know yet. I'm still figuring it out. Figure it out with me. The words came out before Harrison could stop them. Impulsive. Unplanned. Completely unlike him. Charlotte's eyes widened. I'm sorry, what? Look, I know this is crazy. We just met. You're probably thinking I'm some eccentric billionaire with a savior complex. Harrison ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the careful styling. Maybe I am. But 30 minutes ago, I was walking through this hospital thinking about mortality and meaning, and then I saw you, and something just clicked. Clicked. You're facing something impossible with grace and clarity. I've spent years building companies, making money, checking boxes. And for what? What have I actually done that matters? He held her gaze. Let me help you with your list. Paris, a second bookstore, whatever else you want. Let me do something that actually means something. Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. Harrison could see her processing, evaluating, trying to decide if he was genuine or delusional. You don't know me, she finally said. No. But I'd like to. I'm dying, Harrison. That's not hypothetical. This time next year, I won't be here. All the more reason not to waste a single day. Charlotte laughed. It was a surprised, genuine sound that lit up her whole face. You're either the kindest person I've ever met or the strangest. I haven't decided which. Can't I be both? She shook her head, still smiling. I need to think about this. About you. About whether I'm ready to let a stranger with good intentions and too much money into my very limited time. That's fair. Harrison pulled a business card from his wallet, wrote something on the back, and slid it across the table. That's my personal number. Not my assistant, not my office. Me. If you decide you want company for any part of your revised plans, call me. Anytime. Charlotte picked up the card, read it, then looked at him with those remarkable eyes. Okay, Harrison Wells. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. He stood, suddenly reluctant to leave this small table where the world had tilted on its axis. Your coffee really is terrible, by the way, he said. I know. But it's mine, and I'm savoring it. Harrison smiled. Good. He walked away, aware that the hospital administrator was rushing to catch up, aware that his entire carefully planned day had just derailed, aware that nothing in his controlled, predictable life had prepared him for Charlotte Sebastian. Behind him, Charlotte sat alone in the sunlight, holding a business card and a cup of terrible coffee, wondering if hope came in unexpected packages. Outside, Charleston carried on, beautiful and indifferent, while inside a hospital café, two people who shouldn't have met began a story that would change everything. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. Charlotte didn't call for 6 days. Harrison knew because he counted them. Tuesday through Sunday, his phone stayed silent except for the usual business calls, investor updates, and meeting requests that filled his structured life. He caught himself checking the screen more often than reasonable, hoping for a number he wouldn't recognize. Monday morning, July 19th, his phone rang at 6:30 while he was running along the Battery. Charleston spread out around him in the early light, all historic charm and Spanish moss and the kind of beauty that made people forget the humidity. Unknown number. This is Harrison. It's Charlotte Sebastian. Is it too early? Harrison stopped mid-stride, breathing hard. No. Perfect timing. I've been thinking about your offer. The whole helping me live my life thing. And I have a proposition. Come to my bookstore today. Spend the day working there. No assistants, no drivers, no billionaire safety net. Just you, some books, and terrible coffee. If you survive that, maybe we can talk about Paris. Harrison smiled at the harbor. What time? We open at 8. Don't be late. She hung up before he could respond. 3 hours later, Harrison walked through the blue door of the Lighthouse bookstore for the first time. The space was exactly what he'd imagined and nothing like he'd expected. Exposed brick walls lined with floor-to-ceiling shelves. Mismatched comfortable chairs tucked into reading nooks. A cafe counter along one side where the promised terrible coffee presumably came from. Plants everywhere, thriving in the generous natural light. And books. Thousands of them, organized in a system that seemed part logic, part intuition. Holy Charlotte. She stood behind the cafe counter, wearing jeans and a cream-colored linen shirt, hair pulled back in a loose bun. She looked healthier than she had at the hospital. More vibrant. More herself, Harrison suspected, in this space she'd created. You came, she said. You doubted? A little. Rich people don't usually follow through on impulsive offers once they've had time to think. I'm not most rich people. We'll see. Charlotte gestured to an apron hanging by the counter. Put that on. First lesson is the espresso machine. It's temperamental and Italian and responds poorly to impatience. Harrison hung his jacket on a hook and tied on the apron. I run a tech company worth $3 billion. I think I can handle a coffee machine. 20 minutes later, he'd made 4 undrinkable espressos and one that Charlotte described as almost coffee-like if you squint. The machine hates you, she observed, trying not to laugh. The feeling is mutual. You're too aggressive with the tamp. Gentle pressure. Like you're trying to convince it, not force it. Harrison tried again, this time following her guidance. The espresso that emerged was actually drinkable. Better, Charlotte said. You're teachable. That's promising. The morning passed in a rhythm Harrison had never experienced. Customers wandered in, browsing in comfortable silence or asking Charlotte for recommendations. She knew her inventory like other people knew their own memories. A customer wanted something hopeful but not naive. Charlotte handed them The House in the Cerulean Sea. Another needed a book about starting over. Remarkable creatures, Charlotte said without hesitation. Harrison watched her work, mesmerized by the ease of it. She wasn't selling books. She was connecting people to stories they needed. Between customers, she taught him the register, the shelving system, how to make a proper cappuccino. Harrison, who negotiated billion-dollar deals and managed hundreds of employees, fumbled with price tags and steamed milk. You're terrible at this, Charlotte said, grinning. I'm aware. But you're still here. I'm still here. Around noon, the morning rush subsided. Charlotte made them both sandwiches from the café kitchen, and they sat in the small garden behind the store. Brick pavers, wrought iron furniture, climbing jasmine that filled the air with sweetness. The garden was hidden from the street, a secret pocket of peace in the middle of the city. I come out here when I need to remember why I do this, Charlotte said, biting into her sandwich. The store, I mean. Some days are hard. Difficult customers, broken equipment, bills that make me wonder if I'm crazy for trying to keep a bookstore alive in the age of Amazon. But you keep doing it. Because some kid comes in looking for an escape from a bad home life, and I get to hand them a portal to somewhere better. Because a woman going through a divorce finds herself again in a memoir. Because books matter, Harrison. Stories matter. They remind us we're not alone. Harrison had never heard anyone talk about their work the way Charlotte talked about books. Like it was a calling, not just a career. How long have you had this place? For years. Opened it when I was 30 with money I saved and a loan that terrified me. Everyone said I was nuts. Bookstores are dying, Charlotte. Find something sensible, Charlotte. She looked around the garden, satisfaction in her eyes. But I didn't want sensible. I wanted this. Your family supported you? Charlotte's expression shifted, became more careful. My mom did. She died 2 years ago. Cancer, actually. Different kind, same ending. She never got to see the store really thrive, but she believed it would. I'm sorry. Me too. She would have liked you, I think. She had a soft spot for stubborn people who didn't know when to quit. Charlotte met his eyes. Why are you really here, Harrison? And don't say it's about helping me check off a bucket list. There's something else. Harrison set down his sandwich. Honesty, then. My father died when I was 25. Heart attack, completely unexpected. One day he was here, the next he wasn't. I threw myself into work after that. Built the company, made the money, checked all the boxes that prove you've succeeded. He paused, finding the words. But I'm 37 now, and I can't remember the last time I did something that felt real. That mattered beyond quarterly reports and stock prices. Then I saw you in that cafe, and you were so present. So alive, even facing what you're facing. I wanted to understand that. So I'm what? Some kind of inspiration? No. You're someone who reminded me that life is happening right now, and I've been too busy planning to notice. Charlotte was quiet, absorbing this. A breeze moved through the jasmine, carrying its sweetness between them. Okay, she finally said. Here's the deal. I'll let you help with my list. But this goes both ways. You want to learn how to be present? I'll teach you. We'll do my things, but we're also going to do normal things. Grocery shopping. Laundry. Sitting in this garden drinking coffee and doing absolutely nothing productive. That sounds perfect. Don't agree yet. I'm difficult when I don't feel well. Some days I'm tired or nauseous or scared, and I won't be good company. You need to know that going in. Harrison reached across the table, covered her hand with his. I'm not going anywhere, Charlotte. She looked at their hands, then at him. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or the beginning of trust. Okay then, Harrison Wells. Let's see if you can survive an afternoon of inventory. The afternoon was brutal. Harrison counted books until his eyes crossed, organized shelves until his back ached, and learned that the Dewey Decimal System was apparently designed by someone who hated joy. Charlotte supervised with patient amusement, correcting his mistakes and occasionally laughing at his mounting frustration. "You're enjoying this," he accused around 4 o'clock. "Immensely. It's not often I get to boss around a billionaire. I'm going to remember this when we get to Paris." "Who says we're going to Paris?" "You do. You just don't know it yet." Charlotte smiled, and Harrison felt something shift in his chest. Warmth, spreading like sunrise. By 6 o'clock, when Charlotte locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed, Harrison was exhausted in a way he'd never experienced. Not the mental fatigue of back-to-back meetings, but the physical tiredness of honest work. His feet hurt. His shoulders ached. He'd never felt better. "So?" Charlotte asked, untying her apron. "Did you survive?" "Barely. Want to come back tomorrow?" Harrison didn't hesitate. "Yes." They stood in the quiet bookstore, evening light slanting through the windows, and Harrison realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd wanted something this simple. Tomorrow. Another day in this place with this woman who challenged him and intrigued him and made him want to be better. "Charlotte, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you afraid?" She considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. Mostly at night when I can't sleep and I start thinking about all the things I won't get to do. All the years I won't have." She met his eyes. "But then morning comes, and I remember I have today. I have right now. Fear can't take that unless I let it." "You're remarkable." "I'm just trying to make it count." Harrison wanted to kiss her. Wanted it with a sudden intensity that caught him off guard. But it was too soon, too fast. So instead he said, "Have dinner with me. Not here, not at some fancy place. Just dinner. Two people getting to know each other." Charlotte studied him for a long moment. "Okay. But I picked the place." "Deal." She grabbed her bag and led him out into the Charleston evening. They walked through the historic district as the city settled into its nighttime rhythm. Charlotte took them to a small restaurant tucked away on a side street. No tourists, no pretense. Just good food and locals who greeted Charlotte by name. They talked for hours. About books and business, about Charleston and childhood, about dreams and disappointments. Harrison learned that Charlotte had wanted to be a teacher before opening the bookstore. That she loved thunderstorms and terrible reality TV and pineapple on pizza, which she defended passionately. That she'd been engaged once, years ago, to a man who wanted her to be smaller, quieter, more convenient. He didn't like the bookstore idea, Charlotte said over dessert. Said it was impractical. That I should do something sensible. What happened? I chose the books. Turns out choosing yourself is easier when someone's already showing you they'll never choose you back. Harrison told her about building his company from nothing, about the loneliness of success, about how money solved some problems but created others. About his father and the hole his absence had left. They walked back to the bookstore slowly, neither ready for the evening to end. "Thank you," Charlotte said when they reached the blue door. "For today. For showing up and being genuinely terrible at making coffee. Thank you for letting me. Same time tomorrow? I'll be here." Charlotte hesitated, then stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Brief, sweet, devastating. "Good night, Harrison." "Good night, Charlotte." He watched her unlock her car and drive away, then stood on East Bay Street wondering how 6 days ago he'd been a different person with a different life, and now everything had changed. His phone buzzed. A text from Charlotte. "You forgot your jacket. Guess you have to come back." Harrison smiled at the screen, at the city, at the impossible gift of this day. He'd be back. Tomorrow and every day after that she'd allow. Behind the blue door, books waited in the darkness, holding stories of people who found each other against impossible odds. Harrison was starting to believe in impossible things. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. By mid-August 2024, Harrison had learned the secret language of Charlotte's good days and bad days. Good days meant she was at the bookstore by 7, humming while she organized shelves and teased him about his still mediocre cappuccinos. Bad days meant she stayed home, and Harrison would let himself into her small house on King Street with the key she'd given him 3 weeks earlier, bringing soup she wouldn't eat and sitting quietly while she slept. They'd fallen into something neither of them named but both felt. More than friendship, not quite defined. A connection that grew deeper each day, built on conversations that stretched into evenings and comfortable silences that said more than words. Harrison had reorganized his entire life around her. Delegated more at work, promoted his VP to handle day-to-day operations, took meetings from Charleston instead of traveling. His board thought he'd lost his mind. His CFO scheduled an intervention that Harrison politely declined. He didn't care what anyone thought. For the first time in 12 years, he was exactly where he needed to be. August 15th arrived warm and clear, the kind of Charleston day that reminded people why they tolerated the summer humidity. Harrison picked Charlotte up at noon, refusing to tell her where they were going. "I don't like surprises," she said, settling into his car. "You'll like this one." He drove them to the marina where a sailboat waited, nothing ostentatious, just a beautiful vessel ready for an afternoon on the water. Charlotte's eyes went wide. "Harrison, you mentioned you'd never been sailing. I thought today was a good day to fix that." "You bought a boat?" "I borrowed a boat." "There's a difference." "You're ridiculous." "Probably. Come on." They spent the afternoon on the water, Charleston's skyline shrinking behind them as they sailed into the harbor. Harrison handled the boat while Charlotte sat at the bow, face turned to the sun, hair whipping in the wind. She looked free. Unburdened. Exactly how Harrison wanted her to feel every moment they had together. Later, anchored in a quiet spot with the city distant and beautiful, they ate sandwiches and drank wine, and Charlotte told him about the appointment she'd had that morning. "The cancer's progressing faster than they expected," she said, matter of fact as always. "Dr. Morrison wants to start a more aggressive treatment. It might buy some time, but the side effects would be rough." Harrison's hand tightened on his wine glass. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet. More time sounds good, but not if I'm too sick to actually live it." She looked at him, searching his face. "What would you do?" "I can't answer that. It's not my choice." "I'm asking anyway." Harrison set down his glass, chose his words carefully. "I'd want every single second I could get. But I'd also want them to mean something. Quality over quantity, maybe." Charlotte nodded slowly. "That's what I keep thinking. I have things I still want to do. Places I want to see with you." The last two words hung in the air between them. "With me," Harrison repeated. "Yes. Is that okay? That I want you there?" Harrison moved closer, took her hand. "Charlotte, there's nowhere else I want to be." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that as the boat rocked gently, the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon. "Kiss me," Charlotte said quietly. Harrison pulled back to look at her. "Are you sure?" "I've been sure for weeks. I was just waiting to see if you'd figure it out." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbed along her cheekbone, gave her every chance to change her mind. Then he kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Charlotte kissed him back with more intensity, her hand curling into his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled. "Took you long enough." "I was trying to be respectful." "Well, stop it. I don't have time for respectful. I have time for real." Harrison kissed her again, and again, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, as Charleston glittered in the distance, as the world narrowed to just this boat, this moment, this woman who'd changed everything. That evening, Harrison made a decision. He'd been researching for weeks, quietly making calls to specialists around the world. There was a doctor in Switzerland, a treatment not yet approved in the US, experimental but showing promise. It was a long shot, but it was something. He waited until they were back at Charlotte's house, sitting on her porch with glasses of wine, before he brought it up. "I want to talk to you about something medical," he started. Charlotte's expression shifted, became guarded. "Okay. There's a specialist in Zurich. Dr. Werner. She's doing experimental work with pancreatic cancer, immunotherapy combined with targeted radiation. The results are preliminary, but some patients are responding." "Harrison. Just hear me out. I can get you an appointment, cover all the costs, arrange everything. It's not a guarantee, but it's a chance." Charlotte set down her wine glass with careful precision. "You've been researching my cancer." "Yes." "For how long?" "A few weeks." "And you didn't think to discuss this with me first?" Harrison heard the shift in her tone, saw the tension in her shoulders. "I wanted to have real information before I brought it up. I didn't want to give you false hope." "That's not your call to make." Charlotte stood, walked to the porch railing. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this is my body. My life. My decision. I know that. I'm just presenting an option." "No, you're trying to fix something because that's what you do. You see a problem, you throw money at it, you make it better." She turned to face him. "But I'm not a problem to solve, Harrison. I'm a person trying to make peace with my reality. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to help you live. On your terms. Have you noticed that? Everything we've been doing, it's all things you arrange, places you take me, experiences you plan. Where's my agency in any of this?" The words stung because they held truth. Harrison stood, frustrated. "I thought you wanted help with your list." "I wanted a partner, not a project manager. There's a difference." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Be honest, Harrison." How much of this is about me, and how much is about you trying to outrun your own grief about your father? Trying to save someone when you couldn't save him." Harrison flinched like she'd slapped him. "That's not what this is." "Are you sure? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're more invested in keeping me alive than actually being present with me while I am. I'm here every day. Physically, yes. But are you really here? Or are you constantly thinking 3 steps ahead, planning the next treatment, the next specialist, the next thing that might buy more time?" Charlotte's voice was gentle but firm. "I need you to accept that I'm dying, Harrison. Not fight it, not deny it. Accept it." "I can't do that." "Then maybe this isn't going to work." The words landed between them like a grenade. Harrison stared at her, this woman he'd fallen completely in love with over the past month, and felt the foundation shifting beneath his feet. "You don't mean that." "I don't want to mean it. But I also can't spend whatever time I have left managing your feelings about my death. That's not fair to me." "So what are you saying?" Charlotte closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "I'm saying I need space. Time to think about what I actually want, not what you want from me. Charlotte, please, just give me a few days." Harrison wanted to argue, wanted to explain, wanted to make her understand that everything he was doing came from love. But the exhaustion in her face stopped him. She was tired. Not just physically, though he could see that too. Tired of being the strong one, the brave one, the one everyone expected to handle her own death with grace. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll give you space." "Thank you." He collected his jacket, moved toward the porch steps, then stopped. "For what it's worth, you're right. About my father, about me trying to fix things. But you're wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "I'm not trying to keep you alive because I can't accept you're dying. I'm trying to keep you alive because I'm in love with you, and I'm selfish enough to want every possible second." Charlotte's breath caught. "Harrison, you asked for space. I'm giving it to you. But you should know where I stand." He walked down the steps into his car, didn't look back because if he did, he'd turn around and beg her to let him stay. Behind him, Charlotte stood on her porch, tears finally falling, hand pressed to her mouth. Harrison drove through Charleston's lamplit streets, past the historic homes and flowering gardens, past the bookstore with its blue door now dark and locked, past all the beautiful things that suddenly meant nothing without her. He'd meant every word. He loved her. Completely, devastatingly, irrevocably. And he had no idea if love would be enough. 2 days passed with no word from Charlotte. Harrison threw himself into work, took meetings he'd been avoiding, reviewed reports that didn't matter. His assistant commented that he seemed like his old self again. He'd never felt less like himself in his life. On the 3rd day, his phone rang. Unknown number. Harrison Wells. "Mr. Wells, this is Rebecca Chen, I'm a friend of Charlotte's. She asked me to call you." Harrison's heart stopped. "Is she okay?" "She's in the hospital. Charleston Medical. She collapsed at the bookstore this morning. The cancer has spread to her liver. They're saying weeks now, not months." The phone nearly slipped from Harrison's hand. "I'm on my way." He made it to the hospital in 12 minutes, a drive that should have taken 20. Found Rebecca in the waiting area outside Charlotte's room, a petite woman in her 40s with worried eyes. "She's sleeping," Rebecca said. "The doctors gave her something for the pain." "Can I see her?" "She specifically asked for you to be called. Room 412. Harrison walked down the too familiar corridor, past the rooms where hope lived and died daily, to the door marked 412. Charlotte lay in the hospital bed, smaller somehow than she'd seemed on her porch 3 days ago. And 4 ran to her arm. Monitors beeped softly. She looked fragile in a way that terrified him. He pulled a chair close to her bed, took her hand carefully. Her eyes fluttered open. "You came." "Of course I came." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what I said." "You were just trying to help." "No, you were right. I was trying to control something uncontrollable. I was making it about me. You were trying to love me the only way you knew how." Harrison pressed her hand to his lips. "I do love you. So much. I love you too. That's why I needed space. I needed to be sure this was real, not just some beautiful distraction from being scared." "And is it? Real?" Charlotte smiled weakly. "The realest thing I've ever felt." Outside the window, Charleston carried on, indifferent and eternal, while inside room 412, 2 people held onto each other and whatever time remained. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. Charlotte spent 5 days in Charleston Medical Center before the doctors released her with a new reality. The liver metastases had changed everything. Dr. Morrison's carefully neutral expression couldn't hide the truth. they were measuring time in weeks now, maybe a month if she was lucky. Harrison sat beside her hospital bed on the fifth evening, reading aloud from The House on Mango Street while she drifted in and out of sleep. When she woke fully, the sun was setting through the window, painting the room in soft gold. "Take me home," she said. "The doctors want to keep you another night for observation." "I don't care what they want. I'm not spending another minute in this room that smells like disinfectant and fear." She struggled to sit up. "Please, Harrison. Take me home." He helped her dress, signed the papers against medical advice, and drove her to the small house on King Street that had become more familiar to him than his own penthouse. Rebecca was waiting there, having prepared the guest bedroom downstairs so Charlotte wouldn't have to manage stairs. "I set up the medication schedule," Rebecca said, handing Harrison a detailed chart. "Pain management is crucial now. Don't let her convince you she's fine when she's hurting." Charlotte rolled her eyes from the couch where Harrison had settled her. "I'm right here, Rebecca. You can stop talking about me like I'm not. Someone has to be practical since you're both determined to pretend this isn't happening." "We're not pretending," Harrison said quietly. "We're just choosing how we spend the time we have." Rebecca's expression softened. She squeezed his shoulder. "Call me if you need anything. I mean it. 3 in the morning, doesn't matter." After she left, Harrison made tea while Charlotte insisted she wasn't tired despite the exhaustion evident in every line of her body. They sat together on the couch, her feet in his lap, pretending normalcy. "I've been thinking," Charlotte said. "About my list. About what's actually possible now." Harrison waited, rubbing gentle circles on her ankle. "Paris isn't happening. Neither is the second bookstore location. Most of the big dreams I had, they require time I don't have. We could still. No. We can't. And that's okay. I'm not giving up, I'm just being realistic about what matters now." She met his eyes. "What matters is this. You and me. Whatever we can fit into however long I have left. Then that's what we'll do. I want to go back to the bookstore. Not to work, just to be there one more time. I want to sleep in my own bed with you beside me. I want to watch terrible reality TV and eat ice cream for breakfast. I want normal things, Harrison. Small things. Okay. Just okay? No arguments about resting or following doctor's orders." Harrison shifted, gathered her carefully into his arms. "You were right before. I was trying to control everything because I couldn't control the one thing that mattered. But I'm done fighting reality. Whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, that's what we do." Charlotte pressed her face into his shoulder, and he felt her tears soak through his shirt. "I'm so scared," she whispered. It was the first time she'd admitted it out loud. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I don't want to leave you. I just found you." Harrison held her tighter, his own tears falling into her hair. "I don't want to lose you either." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the room grew dark around them, while Charleston settled into evening outside, while the unfairness of it all pressed down like physical weight. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both precious and heartbreaking. Harrison moved into Charlotte's house completely, his penthouse sitting empty across town. They had breakfast in bed, Charlotte managing a few bites of toast before the nausea set in. They watched morning light move across her bedroom walls. They talked about everything and nothing. On good days, Charlotte had enough energy to sit in her small garden while Harrison read to her. On bad days, she slept while he worked quietly beside her, one hand always touching her so she'd know he was there. Rebecca visited daily, bringing meals and managing medications and pretending not to notice when she found them both crying. Other friends came and went, saying careful goodbyes disguised as regular visits. Harrison watched Charlotte say goodbye to her life in pieces. The bookstore manager who promised to keep the lighthouse running exactly as Charlotte would want. The neighbor who'd always borrowed sugar and returned cookies. The regular customers who came to thank her for all the books she'd recommended over the years. Each goodbye took something from her. He could see it in the increasing exhaustion, the way she held on to people a little longer, the tears that came more easily. 3 weeks after leaving the hospital, on a Thursday morning in late September 2024, Charlotte woke and couldn't get out of bed. "I'm just tired," she insisted when Harrison brought her breakfast. But they both knew it was more than tiredness. This was her body beginning to shut down, the cancer-claiming territory that couldn't be reclaimed. Dr. Morrison came to the house that afternoon, examined Charlotte with gentle thoroughness, then spoke to Harrison in the kitchen. "Days," the doctor said quietly. "Maybe a week. Her liver function is declining rapidly. We can keep her comfortable, but that's all we can do now." Harrison leaned against the counter, absorbing the words he'd known were coming but still couldn't quite believe. "Does she know?" "I think she does. She's sharp, Harrison. She's been tracking her own decline. After Dr. Morrison left, Harrison returned to Charlotte's bedside. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. "What did she say?" Charlotte asked. Harrison sat beside her, took her hand. "She said we're in the final stage now." "How long?" "Days. Maybe a week." Charlotte nodded slowly, like she was confirming something she'd already suspected. "Okay. Okay? I'm ready to talk about it. About what happens when I'm gone." "Charlotte. Please. I need to say some things, and I need you to listen without trying to fix anything." Harrison swallowed hard. "Okay." Charlotte turned her head to look at him, and even diminished by illness, her eyes were clear and full of love. "The bookstore goes to Rebecca. I've already set it up with my lawyer. She's wanted her own place for years, and she'll take care of it the right way. All right. This house should be sold. Use the money for the store or give it to charity, whatever makes sense. I don't want you holding on to physical things and torturing yourself." "I'm not sure I can promise that." A small smile crossed her face. "Fair enough. Keep what you need to keep, but don't build a shrine. I mean it, Harrison. I want you to live after I'm gone. I don't know how to do that. You'll figure it out. You're stronger than you think." She squeezed his hand with what little strength she had. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let this destroy you. Don't let loving me and losing me make you close off from the world again. You were so isolated when we met. I don't want to be the reason you go back to that. You won't be. You're the reason I learned to be open in the first place. Then stay open. Fall in love again someday. Build a life that makes you happy." Harrison's vision blurred. "I can't think about that right now." "I know. But promise me anyway. Promise you'll try." "I promise." Charlotte relaxed slightly, satisfied. "Good. Now come lie down with me. I'm tired of talking about sad things." Harrison kicked off his shoes and carefully climbed into bed beside her, arranging pillows so she was comfortable against his chest. Her breathing was labored, each breath requiring conscious effort. "Tell me about Paris," she said softly. "About what we would have done if we'd had time." Harrison closed his eyes, let himself imagine it. "We'd have stayed in a small hotel in the Marais. Somewhere with a view of the rooftops and those little iron balconies. We'd have walked along the Seine at sunset, stopped at every bookstall, bought things we didn't need just because they were beautiful. What else? I'd have taken you to Shakespeare and Company. You'd have loved it. Books stacked everywhere, cats sleeping on the shelves, that smell of old paper and possibility. We'd have gotten lost in the Latin Quarter, eaten at tiny restaurants where the menus were only in French, and you'd have ordered for both of us because you're braver than me." Charlotte smiled against his chest. "Keep going. We'd have sat in the Tuileries garden on those green metal chairs, drinking coffee and watching people. You'd have made up stories about them, about where they were going and what secrets they carried. We'd have kissed under the Eiffel Tower even though it's touristy and cliché, because some clichés exist for a reason. It sounds perfect. It would have been." They lay together in the afternoon quiet, Harrison painting pictures of a future that would never happen, Charlotte listening with her eyes closed, living it in her imagination. "Harrison," she said after a while. "Yeah? Thank you for these months. For showing up at the hospital that day. For being exactly what I needed when I needed it most. Thank you for letting me. For teaching me how to be present. How to love without holding back. We were good together, weren't we? We were perfect together." Charlotte's breathing grew slower, deeper. She was falling asleep, the medication pulling her under. Harrison held her while she slept, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, the smell of her shampoo, the sound of her breathing. He held her like he could keep her in the world through sheer force of will. But he couldn't. No one could. Outside, September rain began to fall on Charleston, gentle and persistent, washing the streets clean, while inside a small house on King Street, a man held the woman he loved and tried to accept the unacceptable. Charlotte slept through the afternoon and into evening. When she finally woke, it was dark outside, rain still falling softly. "What time is it?" she asked, voice rough. "Almost 8. You hungry?" "No. But I want to ask you something." "Okay." Charlotte shifted, trying to see his face in the dim light. If this was all we got, these few months, would it still have been worth it? Knowing how it ends. Harrison didn't hesitate. "Every second was worth it. I'd do it all again exactly the same way. Even the parts where I was difficult? Especially those parts. You kept me honest." She smiled, settling back against him. "Good answer." They stayed awake late into the night, talking quietly, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing at memories from their brief time together. Harrison told her about the first time he saw her in the hospital café, how something in her expression had reached inside his chest and refused to let go. Charlotte told him she'd noticed him immediately too, this man in an expensive suit who looked lost despite clearly being found. As midnight approached, Charlotte's breathing grew more labored. Harrison adjusted her pillows, gave her medication, held water to her lips. "I love you," she said, the words slurred with exhaustion. "In case I forget to say it tomorrow. I love you too. More than I knew was possible." "That's good. That's everything." She fell asleep again, and Harrison held her through the night, listening to rain on the roof, counting her breaths like prayers, and hoping for just one more day. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. Charlotte woke on Friday morning, October 4th, with unusual clarity. The fog that had clouded her mind for days lifted, leaving her more present than she'd been in over a week. Harrison noticed immediately. He'd been dozing in the chair beside her bed, but her movement brought him awake. "Hey," she said, her voice stronger than it had been. "Help me up. I want to sit outside." "Charlotte, I don't think." "Harrison. Please. I feel good this morning. Let's not waste it." He recognized what this was. Dr. Morrison had warned him about it. The rally. The brief surge of energy that sometimes came near the end, the body's last gift before letting go. But if this was what Charlotte wanted, he'd give it to her. He helped her into a robe, supported her weight as they moved slowly through the house to the small garden. The October morning was perfect, cool and clear, the kind of Charleston day that made people fall in love with the city. Harrison settled Charlotte into her favorite chair, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and sat close enough to touch. "This is better," Charlotte said, tilting her face toward the sun. "I was getting tired of that bedroom." "You want breakfast? Coffee?" "Coffee sounds nice. The real kind, not the terrible hospital version." Harrison went inside, made coffee with shaking hands, brought it out in the ceramic mugs she loved. They sat together in the garden while Charleston woke up around them, morning light filtering through the jasmine vines, birds calling from somewhere nearby. "I need to tell you something," Charlotte said after a while. "I've been thinking about it all week, waiting for a moment when my head was clear enough to say it right." Harrison set down his coffee, gave her his full attention. "I was so angry when I got my diagnosis. Furious at the unfairness of it. I had plans, Harrison. I was going to do so many things. Build an empire of bookstores, travel the world, fall in love and get married and maybe have kids." She smiled softly. "And then the cancer took all of that away." "I know. But here's what I figured out. I did fall in love. Deeply, completely, in a way that matters more than time. I got to experience something real with someone who saw me, all of me, and loved me anyway." She reached for his hand. "You gave me that. In a few months, you gave me what some people search for their whole lives and never find." Harrison's throat tightened. "You gave me the same thing." "I know. That's why I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer." "Okay." Charlotte took a breath, gathering strength. "Marry me." Harrison stared at her, certain he'd misheard. "I know it seems pointless," Charlotte continued. "I know we probably have days, not weeks. I know a wedding won't change what's coming. But I want to be your wife, Harrison. Even if it's only for a little while. I want that to be part of my story." "Charlotte, I should be the one proposing? Maybe. But I'm the one dying, so I'm claiming the privilege of asking first." She squeezed his hand. "What do you say? Will you marry me?" Harrison dropped to his knees beside her chair, took both her hands in his, and felt everything inside him break open. "Yes. God, yes. I'll marry you right now if you want." Charlotte laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Right now might be rushing it. But soon. Very soon. How soon? Tomorrow? Is that crazy? It's perfect. Harrison pulled out his phone, mind already racing through logistics. He called his assistant first, gave rapid-fire instructions. Contact the best wedding planner in Charleston. Money was no object, they needed a wedding by tomorrow afternoon. Then he called Rebecca. "What's wrong?" Rebecca answered, immediate concern in her voice. "Nothing's wrong. Actually, something's very right. Charlotte and I are getting married tomorrow, and we need you to help make it happen." Silence, then the sound of Rebecca crying. "Oh my God. Yes. Yes, of course. What do you need?" "Everything. Can you come over?" "I'm on my way." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of beautiful chaos. Rebecca arrived within the hour and took control with the efficiency of a 5-star general. The wedding planner, a woman named Diane who Harrison paid triple her usual fee, worked miracles. They'd hold the ceremony in Charlotte's garden. Small, intimate, just a handful of people who mattered most. Diane brought in a florist who transformed the space with white roses and jasmine, strung lights overhead that would glow like stars when evening came. Charlotte needed a dress. Rebecca handled it, calling in favors from a designer friend who brought options to the house. Charlotte chose a simple cream-colored gown, tea-length, with lace sleeves that would keep her warm. She looked like something out of a dream. Harrison wore a navy suit, white shirt, no tie. Charlotte had always said she liked him best when he was a little undone. The officiant was a judge Harrison knew from charitable work, a kind woman who agreed to perform the ceremony without question. The guest list was small. Rebecca, a few of Charlotte's closest friends from the bookstore, Harrison's assistant who'd become more like family over the years. By Saturday afternoon, October 5, 2024, everything was ready. Harrison helped Charlotte dress, his hands gentle with the delicate fabric. She'd insisted on doing her own makeup, and despite the tremor in her hands, she managed it. She looked radiant. Sick, yes. Tired, absolutely. But also happy in a way that made Harrison's chest ache. "You're sure about this?" he asked, adjusting her necklace. "I've never been more sure of anything. Even though. Especially because." "No more even those, Harrison. Just yes." He kissed her forehead. "Just yes." At 4 o'clock, with autumn sunlight slanting through the garden and the scent of jasmine heavy in the air, Charlotte Sebastian married Harrison Wells. She walked out to the garden on Harrison's arm, too weak to make it alone but determined to walk nonetheless. Their guest stood as she appeared, and Harrison heard more than one person fighting back tears. The ceremony was brief, perfect. The judge spoke about love that transcends time, about commitment that matters regardless of how long it lasts. Harrison and Charlotte had written their own vows. Harrison went first, his voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Charlotte, when I met you in that hospital cafe 4 months ago, I was a man who'd forgotten how to really live. I was successful, sure. Rich, accomplished, checking all the boxes. But I was empty. Then you looked at me with those remarkable eyes and challenged me to be present, to be real, to show up for something that mattered." He paused, gathering himself. "You taught me that a life well lived isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments of genuine connection, in love given freely, in the courage to be vulnerable. You gave me the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. You let me love you. I promise to honor that gift every day I have left. I promise to live fully, the way you taught me. I promise to never forget that knowing you, loving you, being loved by you, was the best thing that ever happened to me." Charlotte was crying openly now, but smiling through the tears. When it was her turn, she spoke softly, and everyone leaned in to hear. "Harrison, you showed up when I needed you most and stayed when things got hard. You could have walked away a dozen times. No one would have blamed you for choosing an easier path. But you stayed. You held my hand through the worst of it. You made me laugh when I wanted to cry. You gave me these months that I'll carry with me wherever I go next." Her voice broke, but she continued. "I don't know what happens after this. I'd like to think that love doesn't end just because life does. That somehow, we'll find each other again. But even if this is all we get, it was enough. You were enough. We were enough." The judge pronounced them married, and Harrison kissed his wife as their small audience applauded through tears. They had a reception in the garden as evening settled over Charleston. Rebecca had arranged for catering, and someone had brought champagne. Charlotte managed a few sips, ate a bite of cake, then settled into Harrison's arms on the garden love seat while their guests celebrated around them. "How are you feeling?" Harrison asked, holding her close. "Tired. Happy. Complete." She looked up at him. "Thank you for today. For making this happen so fast. Thank you for asking me. For wanting this. I wanted you to know, before the end, that you were my choice. My person. That if I'd had 100 years, I still would have chosen you." Harrison kissed her hair, unable to speak past the emotion closing his throat. The celebration wound down as night deepened. Guests said their goodbyes with long hugs and whispered blessings. Rebecca was the last to leave, kissing Charlotte's cheek and promising to check in tomorrow. Finally alone, Harrison carried Charlotte to their bed. She was fading, exhausted from the day, but peaceful. "Best day of my life," she murmured as he settled her against the pillows. "Mine too. Will you read to me? One last time?" Harrison picked up the book from her nightstand, the same one he'd been reading to her for weeks. He read until her breathing evened out, until she fell asleep with a slight smile on her face, until the words blurred because he couldn't see through his tears. He set the book aside and lay down beside his wife, pulling her carefully into his arms. "I love you, Charlotte Wells," he whispered. She stirred slightly, whispered back, "I love you too." Those were the last words she spoke. Charlotte died peacefully at 3:17 Sunday morning, October 6, 2024, in her husband's arms, in her own bed, surrounded by love. Harrison held her for a long time after she was gone, memorizing the weight of her, the way she fit against him, refusing to let go until the sun came up and Rebecca arrived and gently helped him accept what he already knew. The funeral was held at a small church in downtown Charleston on a rainy Wednesday. The Lighthouse bookstore closed for the day, a sign in the window reading, "Celebrating a life well lived." Harrison sat in the front pew, Rebecca on one side and his assistant on the other, listening to people share stories about Charlotte. Her generosity, her laugh, her gift for matching people with the exact book they needed. Someone read from The Velveteen Rabbit, Charlotte's favorite. Someone else sang, "What a Wonderful World." When it was Harrison's turn to speak, he stood at the front of the church and looked at the gathering of people whose lives Charlotte had touched. "My wife taught me that love isn't measured in time," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet church. "She taught me that a few months of real connection matter more than years of going through the motions. She taught me to be present, to be brave, to choose love even when it comes with an expiration date." He paused, looked at her casket covered in white roses. Charlotte believed in stories, in their power to transform us and connect us and remind us we're not alone. This was our story. Brief but complete. Painful but beautiful. And I'm grateful for every word of it. 6 months later, on an April morning in 2025, Harrison stood in front of the Lighthouse bookstore. Rebecca had kept her promise, running it exactly as Charlotte would have wanted. The blue door still welcomed readers. The sign still invited people to be open to possibilities. Harrison had funded a renovation, adding the second location Charlotte had dreamed of. 2 Lighthouse bookstores now existed in Charleston, both thriving, both honoring Charlotte's vision. He'd also established the Charlotte Wells Foundation, funding pancreatic cancer research and providing support for patients and families facing terminal diagnoses. Dr. Werner's experimental treatment in Switzerland was now partially funded by the foundation. It wouldn't save everyone, but it would save some. Charlotte would have liked that. Harrison had kept his promise to her. He was living, not just existing. He'd returned to work with new purpose, using his resources to fund things that mattered. He'd stayed open, letting people in, building genuine connections. He still missed her every day. Still reached for her in the morning before remembering. Still found himself wanting to tell her things, share moments, hear her laugh. But he didn't regret a single second. Not the pain, not the loss, not the heartbreak that came with loving someone you knew you'd lose. Because Charlotte had been right. Some love stories aren't about time. They're about depth, truth, presence. They're about showing up for each other, even when it's hard. They're about choosing love, again and again, for as long as you have. Harrison walked through the blue door of the Lighthouse, greeted Rebecca with a hug, and spent the morning doing what Charlotte had taught him to do. Being present. Being grateful. Being alive. Outside, Charleston carried on in its timeless way, beautiful and indifferent, while inside a bookstore with a blue door, stories waited to connect people across time and space and even death. And somewhere, Harrison believed, Charlotte was smiling. Their story had ended, but the love remained. That was enough. That was everything. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next.